Welcome to this Q&A from the Fertility Alliance. Today we're going to be speaking about reclaiming Christmas, and we're talking to Angela Pericleous-Smith, who is the chair of the counselling organisation BICA, the British Infertility Counselling Association. So Angela, welcome to this Q&A with the Fertility Alliance. And I wanted to start by asking you, what is it about Christmas that makes it so difficult for people who are trying to conceive?
Hi, Kate. Thanks for inviting me today. Christmas. It's interesting because Christmas is such a big event of the year, and there's so much pressure put on Christmas. And I think one of the things that makes it very challenging is that we put a lot of pressure on Christmas as being a perfect time and an ideal time, and it's a time when we spend time with our families, we take time from work. And if we look at social media, generally speaking, there's a lot of idealistic, perfect family life, all the perfect Christmas movies come out. Um, so I think there's often this pressure that everything needs to be perfect at Christmas and very family orientated. And that can make it extremely challenging for people who are trying to conceive or suffering with secondary infertility because it's far from that perfect and ideal family life that they so want.
I wanted to ask you a bit more about pressure because I think there's also often a lot of pressure to kind of for everyone to be happy and jolly. And if you're not feeling that way inside, it can be really quite difficult, can't it? And how do you think people can get around that without feeling that they're being like the kind of, joy, unjoyful person in the arena?
Yeah, the joy kill. Yeah, it's really difficult. I mean, I encourage everybody to give themselves permission to do what feels right for them. So if it doesn't feel right to socialize or to laugh and joke, that's fine. And not kind of beat themselves up. It's really hard because like a lot of people are spending Christmas with families, or there is their expectation to spend time with families. So sometimes nieces and nephews and babies and small children. And that can be really difficult because particularly if you're feeling sad and everybody wants you to be fun and happy, but perhaps like giving yourself permission to take some time out or to go out for a walk for 15, 20 minutes. I think that's really important to kind of be aware of what the triggers may be for you and then think of things that will give you permission to be able to deal with that situation.
So do you think things like taking time out, getting there late, and maybe sometimes not going at all to something?
Absolutely fine to not go at all. I think that's crucial. Taking time out, getting there late if that works, but often people can say that actually adds more pressure because if people have already been there and then you come late to something, there's kind of more pressure, like you're the focus coming in sometimes. I mean, it can work either way, can't it? Um, but but yeah, so sometimes people go early or they go late or not stay as long, all of those things. And that's I think it is a good idea to take some time before whatever the event is to think about what coping strategies might be useful for you. What can you do? Is there another room in the house you can go to? Is it acceptable to go late? Would that work or would that be more pressure? Could you go early? Um, is it reasonable to go out for a walk for some fresh air? All of those things really taking some time and ultimately not going at all.
Are those kind of events, they're often the kind of thing where people do ask the difficult questions like, oh, when are you going to get round to having children? Is there anything you can do to get round that or to make it better?
Um, Prepare again. And unfortunately, there's no one stock answer. Again, I think this is different for different people, different groups. People will often have different responses for different people in their lives, whether that's a family member or a sibling or in-laws or work colleagues, etc. And it is that really personal question, isn't it, when you're trying to conceive. And again, everybody is different. So some people will have a stop response of, oh, we're just enjoying life now, or we'll get there one day, to the more personal saying where they actually are. I don't think there is one stock answer, unfortunately. But again, thinking about it beforehand, allowing yourself some time beforehand to almost like preempt the questions that might come up and from whom and what kind of response you may be able to give them may be helpful.
The other thing that can sometimes happen at that sort of event is that someone waits until the family are all together to make a pregnancy announcement. And again, that can just be so difficult to handle. Is there anything people can do?
I think in my experience, quite often quite often, particularly with family members, people know that a pregnancy announcement might be coming or somebody's trying, but not always, not always. And obviously, if that announcement came, that could absolutely floor somebody trying to conceive. Um, Again, if that happens, that kind of permission to be able to leave or leave the room or take a break. I think it is really difficult. A lot of people I work with have a sense of people who are trying. They may have already even spoken to them and asked them to let them know, for example, by text message. Everybody's so unique and individual. So some people would want that text message first. So they've got time to have their initial gut reaction and then if you like, put your face on. Um, I think it is really difficult if that kind of comes out of the blue at a family Christmas event. But again, I think, my key message is giving yourself permission to do whatever feels right. And there's no right or wrong. And if you have an emotional reaction, that's okay. You're human.
You were talking earlier about the kind of images of the perfect Christmas, and I think social media can be particularly difficult like that at this time of year. Is it sometimes a good idea to have a bit of a social media break, do you think?
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Sabbatical from social media is a really good idea. I mean, social media, family and friends putting all the perfect photos up and but even TV adverts or shop advertisements, the supermarket matching pajamas. And it's not his and hers matching pajamas anymore. It's his and hers and children and babies and family pets. So even everything's expanded and it so infiltrates into everywhere. So if you're able to take a break from social media, um, that can be really useful and take some time out.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about was about sort of excess at Christmas. So a lot of people get really worried about drinking at Christmas, either because they think they might be tempted to drink too much, which would potentially they would feel, have some kind of impact on their fertility, or because they don't want to drink and they're worried everyone's going to notice and maybe even assume that they're expecting a baby because of that rather than they're trying to get pregnant. I mean, would you have any thoughts on that?
Um, yeah, again, everybody is different as to how they will handle that and kind of questions or I think each family is different, aren't they? In terms of if you notice somebody's not drinking, there are some families that will make a big thing. Oh, you're not drinking. Why is that? And there's others that won't. And a lot of people do worry about that. Some some people who aren't drinking, for example, will potentially take their own non-alcoholic wine, gin. You can get lots of different alcohols these days that are non-alcoholic. Um, other people do actually take Christmas as their opportunity to have that bit of a blowout before the new year. And I mean that is the other thing I was going to say about Christmas and New Year and trying to conceive that often it is that break. A lot of clinics close over Christmas, so there's almost like an enforced break, and then starting again in January. So some people do take it as their opportunity to have a bit of a blowout and have that drink and try not to worry. And it's all about the balance, isn't it? And moderation. I'm not medical at all, but my understanding from the evidence is one glass of wine isn't going to be the reason. Um, so it's kind of taking everything in balance.
Presumably the same thing would apply to food as well, because I know a lot of people end up going on really quite restrictive diets of what they will and won't eat, and maybe worry about how they'll handle that over the Christmas break.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's what they will and won't eat, and particularly if like BMI as well, if people have to have a certain BMI for treatment. And and again, balancing that, but also particularly if people have been on a strict diet or are engaged in a strict diet, there is that kind of worry that it's going to spoil it, or what if they overindulge or people notice. Some people take like their own dish as well if they're going. I think sometimes that's easier to control if you're hosting Christmas, and you have to do what feels right for you, because somebody who's been doing an eating regime for 3 months and having treatment in the new year may or may not want to use Christmas as the blowout. They may want to continue because a lot of people would beat themselves up that they've ruined ruined it by what they've done that one day at Christmas or those few days at Christmas. So some people might prepare their own dishes or take their own dishes. Um, but also have a think about if it was a family member or a friend saying to you, I'm drinking orange juice, or I'm not drinking wine, or I'm eating this year. Um, how much investigating would you do about that? Because I think quite often we worry a lot more about what people are going to think or say than quite often what people are thinking or saying. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. It makes total sense. I think we do sort of, people are very worried about other people noticing they're not drinking, but quite often if you walk around with a drink all evening and not drink it, no one's going to have the least idea that you're
Yeah,
not drinking, are they?
yeah.
If you had to give one kind of summary of sort of advice about Christmas, what would you say to people?
Um, be yourself. Think about what is going to be useful for you in all different scenarios, and think about Christmas as, I don't know how to summarize this into one piece of advice, but almost like, yes, Christmas may be that time for a break from work and to spend time with family and friends, etc. But really important to look after yourself and do what feels right for you, whether that's not engaging or taking time out or spending time with family and friends. It's got to feel right for your well-being.
That was brilliant, Angela. Thank you so much for your tips on reclaiming Christmas and maybe making it a bit of your own as well. I mean, the other thing I was going to ask you about actually was around people creating their own Christmassy things. And I think that can be really helpful too, can't it? I wonder if you could just say a little bit about that.
Yeah, people do develop their own Christmas. I think that is the other thing about Christmas and the difficulties. Often people have these traditions and sometimes family traditions, but there's nothing to stop anybody at any point starting a new tradition, whatever that might be. Um, so whether that's going out for a walk on Christmas morning or whether that's watching a science fiction film on Christmas Eve instead of a happy family orientated Christmas film. It's okay to start your own traditions that don't need to be the idealistic, perfect picture, perfect family picture.
Thank you so much, Angela. That was really, really helpful. And thank you for helping us to reclaim Christmas. This was a Q&A from the Fertility Alliance, and you can find lots more of them on our YouTube channel. So thanks for listening.